School of the Seers. This is the book that I'm known for. This is the book that takes me in some of the most interesting places of the world. I actually took about 7 years to write this book. This is not a quick book. Although,
I want it. I want that book.
So it took 7 years to write it, and I still get people who come up to me and say, I read your whole book in one evening. And I'm like, thanks. That doesn't bless me. Read it again. Who doesn't yet have a copy of this? Why not? Let me give this to you. Well, I've written 4 different books, and it's interesting because about 3 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago actually, I was being ordained by Randy Clark. My wife and I have been under his ministry for many years. We worked on staff, we did internships, we did kind of everything you can think of that Randy has. And so we were getting ordained under him 2.5 years ago, and Patricia King was also getting ordained at the same time. And so after she got ordained, she turned and she prophesied over me, and she said, "You're being ordained today as an author." So in the last 2.5 years, I've had 3 books put out. So it was a pretty good word. And the most recent one, this one's called Raptureless, An Optimistic Guide to the End of the World. A little bit tongue-in-cheek. This is an interesting one because when I think about the topic of end times and eschatology, I just normally think of, really poor Christian films. I think of stuff that, when you look at the numbers, like Left Behind, the series, the book series sold 65 million copies. I don't know if you knew that. Late Great Planet Earth by Hale Lindsey in 1970 sold 35 million copies. 88 Reasons Why Jesus Will Return in 1988 sold 4.5 million copies. Did you know he updated it a year later? 89 Reasons for 89? Actually, he updated it. There were 5 editions. 88, 89, 91, 93, and 95. And then Edgar Winston was able to live out the rest of his life on an island with his mansion in the Bahamas, living off a bunch of dumb Christians' money. It's really quite a painful story when you think about it. His last edition sold 300,000. You got the whole set. That must have cost a fortune on Amazon used. He's a good friend of yours, huh? I don't know if you should have Chad speak. So what I did is I decided to take this book and operate in the opposite spirit. I actually put it online. In the last year, we've had about 80,000 hits as people are just reading it for free. I just made the whole book for free online, raptureless.com. I just put it in print because it just seems like there's a lot of people who aren't going to sit down and read an entire book off their computer screen.
Right.
So, normal people that aren't going to do that. So I figured I'd get it in print for you guys as well. So I have that. I'd like to give this to you guys. It's your copy. Cool. Well, this is great. I've been looking forward to this. I always look forward to time when Chad and I are together. This is like our 3rd or 4th time to do something together. And my wife and I usually travel together as well, and usually Julia's along too, so our wives get together really well. And my wife's actually home. She is 16 weeks pregnant with our first child. So yeah, we're going through a new shift, a new phase right now, and learning how that goes. So, not sure all of what ministry will look like. The last 5 years we've been traveling full-time all across the country, teaching on many different things. As you mentioned, rogue theologian is kind of a moniker I've picked up over the last few years. I'm finishing a doctorate right now in theology through Vision International in San Diego, and it's been a lot of fun to finish out my schooling finally. But you know, it's more than just knowledge for me. I think all of us, to some degree, are called to be leaders. We're all called to be theologians because it's simply one who studies God. So everybody in this room is a part of that. Yeah. So what I want to talk tonight, I'm going to get into some things about leadership that may be a little bit different, but I really have been thinking through what to share, knowing that your house, your family here is going to be growing into some new facilities and some new growth and some of the things that are about to take place in this house. And so as I've been looking at that and asking the Lord what to share with you, He keeps bringing me back to a message I usually don't start with. It's kind of interesting where we're going to go tonight. So let's just commit this to the Lord. Lord, we thank you that you're here. We thank you that you never went anywhere and that you're always here. And Lord, I ask that you'd help these that are listening to hear your word in a fresh way, in a new way. Hearts would be open, minds would be prepared to hear something new from your word. And bless your people in Jesus' name. Amen. So if you have your Bible with me or you have your phone and your app, if you go to Matthew chapter 20, that's where we'll pick up together. I want to share something interesting before we jump into Matthew 20. So just keep your finger there for a moment. And I was just doing some looking at this recently. And over in Revelation 3, and you can just follow me mentally, it's a passage that many of us know. We've heard a lot of things over the years about the church in Laodicea. And it says in Revelation 3, "These are the words of the Amen, the faithful and the true witness, the ruler of God's creation. I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish you were either one or the other. So because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I am about to spit you out of my mouth." Now we've heard probably some really heavy teachings surrounding that passage. And just to illustrate a point, let me ask the question. How many of you think being hot for the Lord, good or bad? We're going to be interactive. Good or bad? Good. Ah, there we go. Being cold for the Lord, good or bad? Bad. Being lukewarm, good or bad?
Bad. Or worse. Horrible.
There's like a wave of answers on that one. I don't know. Let me think for a moment. The interesting thing about this is that we've heard so many messages, but if we really stop and think about what we're saying. So it's good to be hot for the Lord, and then we're saying it's bad to be cold for the Lord, and then it's bad or really bad or worse to be lukewarm. So those are our options that we just voted on together, right? So now if you think about this, how we define this, if we define cold as bad, and that's the one I would call into question, because he's saying he'd rather have you be hot or cold, and in our mind we jump to this thing where we say, okay, hot, that means fervent. It means I fast a lot, it means I pray a lot, it means I do all the hot spiritual whatever. You know, whatever's hot and trendy, I do it, and that makes me a hot Christian. So that's our thinking, right? I mean, it's just kind of ingrained. But on the other side, we say cold, and would you agree that you've heard that taught, like being against the Lord, like being an atheist, being a non-believer, that's someone who's cold against the Lord? Would you agree with that you've heard that? So God would rather have you be hot or cold, meaning have you be either a really good Christian or an atheist going to hell forever, than to have you be a mediocre Christian.
Well,
That's actually the level of guilt and manipulation and burden that we place on people when we think like that, because we're telling them God would rather have you not be a Christian than to be a crappy one. That's what we're telling people. There's something wrong with that message. God would rather have a mediocre Christian than to have you go to hell. That's the real truth. But our misunderstanding of cold has got us into some messed up thinking. And it's a tradition. It's rather than someone who actually studied it out. I don't know who the original pastor was that kind of made up this definition. But here's what's really going on. Laodicea had two local other cities very nearby. One was called Hierapolis and one is called Colossae. You recognize Colossae? The Colossians. At the end of Colossians chapter 4, Paul is greeting all these different people, and he talks about the churches in the nearby towns of Laodicea and Hierapolis. It's actually in the end of Colossians 4 if you want to check it out sometime. So these three cities were very near each other. Now the interesting thing geographically is that Laodicea was downstream. Now, there were differences because Hierapolis was known for its mineral hot springs, whereas Colossae was known because it was between two large mountains where icy rivers would run down. So you have these two things going on inside this prophecy that he's using the local geography to talk about something as he's prophesying. So he's saying to the church in Laodicea, I would rather have you be like the hot mineral springs of Hierapolis, where people go and they sit in the water and they get restored and they get healed. Or I'd rather have you be spiritually like Colossae, where the amazing cold rivers run and the icy mountain water comes. But instead, Laodicea, you're like you are in the natural. Downstream from both of that, you're the lukewarm water that's putrid and smells because of the mineral springs. You're like you are in the natural, in the spiritual. Wow. That's the actual picture that John is painting in that passage. And yet we've heard differently, right? Mm-hmm. This is a part for me when I look at, I love truth. I don't care about being right. I care about truth.
Yeah.
I'd rather find out thousands of times that I'm wrong as I step into more truth.
Yeah.
It's great to be wrong when you can find it.
Yeah.
If you can't find that you're wrong, you don't keep moving forward. So I want to talk to you about some truths tonight, and they come from a different perspective perhaps, maybe challenge some things that have been there for a long time and kind of stir the pot. For me, I want to talk about leadership, but I'm going to talk about it from an angle that, for one, I'm talking to everybody in the room. You're a leader. Let me just define it simply. If you have influence in someone else's life, they see you as a leader. You may not see yourself as a leader, but if you're in any position where you influence someone, it makes you a leader. So don't discount yourself and, write yourself off from the very beginning. And we'll pick up together in Matthew chapter 20. So Matthew chapter 20, starting in verse 20. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons, and kneeling down, asked a favor of him. What is it that you want? He asked. She said, grant that one of these two sons of mine may sit at your right and the other at your left in your kingdom. You don't know what you're asking, Jesus said to them. Can you drink the cup that I am going to drink? We can, they answered. Jesus said to them, you will indeed drink from my cup, but to sit at my right or my left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared by my Father. First off, we'll stop there for a moment. Really, James and John? Really? You get your mommy to go to Jesus and ask for special favors? Wow. When the 10 heard about this, they were indignant with the two brothers. Yeah, they're thinking we should have asked our mom. Jesus called them together and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. You know what I find fascinating here, and it seems like it's missing from a lot of teaching, is that Jesus does not rebuke them for a desire for greatness.
Yeah, that's right.
He's got no problem with their desire to be great, but he redefines what greatness is. So it's good that you desire to be great. Now we'll define what greatness looks like. Become like one of these little children, and he redefines what greatness is. If you want to be first, you get to be last. If you read over in 1 Timothy 3, he says, he who desires to be a bishop or an overseer desires a good thing. It's a good desire to want to be in leadership, to have greatness, to be great. But then you have to define it the way Jesus defines it, for it to actually be greatness. Otherwise, we so easily can slip over into being like the Gentiles who lord it over each other. That's the real concern. And that's something that we're going to look at a little bit more. So we'll come back to that. Let's go over to John 13 if you're turning with me. John chapter 13. So we'll just start in verse 1. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and to go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, that he had come from God and was returning to God. Okay, pause. This is quite an interesting piece, right? What he just said. All power had been given to him. He's got all power. He came from God, and he's about to return to God. That sentence is packed with thoughts, and I don't even want to get into it too much, but just know this is like the pinnacle. He knows everything's under me. I have all power. I came from God. I'm about to go back to God. So here's his natural conclusion of what he's going to do. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you will never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." Lord, then, not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well. There's something going on here. We don't hear this passage as often as we hear the one where Jesus says, "Get behind me, Satan." He's rebuking Peter over there. Well, in that passage, he's trying to tell Jesus, no, don't go to Jerusalem, don't get crucified. That's not the right thing to do, Jesus. And so he's trying to convince him, and he gets kind of this slap of a rebuke, like, "Get behind me, you are mindful of the things of man, not the things of God." So he gets rebuked. But in this passage, this is a lot more weighty. What he actually just said to him is, "Peter, if you don't get this right, you have nothing to do with me." That's pretty heavy. "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." No part is pretty heavy. So Jesus answered, "Those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him. And that is why he said, not everyone was clean. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set for you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." I've been saying it this way, and I think that this is really something that is going to begin to rise up in the body of Christ. I refer to what I'm sharing with you tonight as a new breed of leader. I believe that there's a new breed of leader that's rising up. It's not something that's never existed, but it's something that's going to begin to become more prominent in the body of Christ in a way that it has not been, at least in our generation. This new breed of leader, it's servant-based authority. And I know that there's been a large emphasis on the fivefold ministry from Ephesians 4, the apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, and teacher, from the angle of that they're an equipper, that they equip the saints for the work of ministry. You understand that, right? Yeah, this house understands that. So, although that is absolutely, completely true, I think there's another balance to this that has been missing in the body of Christ. And that's that fivefold ministers are equippers and foot washers. That's the other side of this coin. Fivefold ministers are called to be equippers and foot washers. That's the other piece that a lot of us have been missing. And so you can get into this mode of, I want to be like that guy who goes and travels and trains and teaches and equips, and they're fivefold whatever, when there's also that side of, are you ready to wash some feet?
Yeah.
Do you want to wash feet? Are you ready for the promotion of more feet?
Come on.
With greater authority comes greater number of feet to wash.
That's good.
There's something here that's been confused in the body where we think of authority and we think synonymously in our mind of control. We think of authority and we think of control. If you have 100 members in your church that you have authority over because God gave you that position, that means you have control of 100 people. It's never put in those terms, but there's a misunderstanding where people equate authority with control. When it actually means if you have 100 people that you've been given authority from the Lord over, in that sense, it means you have 200 feet to wash. 199 if you have like a pirate or something. But it's about servant-based authority. It's not about control. The confusion for us, and this is our cultural understanding, so many of us, and when I say cultural, I don't mean American, I mean humanity. For us as humans, we have this understanding that authority means control. Now, a lot of people really fall into one of two camps. They want a God so big that he controls everything, or they want a government so big that it controls everything. And those are the two systems of control. And then there's a small pocket of individuals who understand the fruit of the Holy Spirit is self-control. So who's controlling you? God doesn't want to. He wants you to. See, it gets confused because so often we think in this paradigm of this top-down hierarchy that if God is the biggest authority, that also means he's the biggest control. God must be this giant controlling spirit. When in reality, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is
liberty,
control and legalism and lots of rules. Right, we know the verse. Right. So, if where his Spirit is, there is liberty or there is freedom, if we, don't use the King James, if we use freedom, then where we have now, we have freedom. Could that mean that we might have messes in our church at times?
Yep.
Because there's a lot of people confused. They think if the Holy Spirit shows up, then it should be a really nice controlled environment where nobody makes any mistakes because the Holy Spirit's there. Why would you have someone rolling on the ground and laughing and manifesting? And why would you have demons show up? And why would you have all this stuff if the Holy Spirit was really present? Well, because then actual freedom enters the room and people's stuff gets to the surface. There's something about Jesus that people didn't feel afraid to be themselves around him. And that they are around religion, but not around Jesus. You understand, he had like a zone of freedom, and around Jesus you felt free to be yourself and let all your stupid come to the surface. Like Peter thinks, I can argue with you and you're not going to go to Jerusalem and get martyred so that I don't have to follow a martyr, but I can follow someone who's going to fight Rome, and he's got this whole thing in his mind, and he's like, Peter, no. But I'm glad you felt free enough to let that out of the bag. And they felt free. No, don't wash my feet, Jesus. What are you thinking? I know you're God, but, that's a bad idea. Like, They felt free to let their stupid out. Like, they were free to do that. And people don't feel that around the leaven of the Pharisees. Around the leaven of the Pharisees, you feel control. You feel that, like, everything has to be perfect, and you have to have that shiny veneer on the surface, and you can't have any mistakes. That people will just crucify you, and they find out that you have something wrong with you. And that's a problem, because leaders are trained to, and this happens in a lot of seminaries, leaders are trained to live on a small pedestal. And you need to set an example for the people. They shouldn't know all your mistakes or all your whatever, because if they do, they won't respect you or look up to you. So you have to live just, and float around with a white gown, and you have to do that, and that's how people are going to respect you. When in reality, real, true, servant-based authority is a foot washer. It's someone who's real. It's not someone who's, just controlling everything. And on the other side, too, you have avoid the leaven of Herod, which is the political system, the top-down political power struggle. So it's another form of control. But the leaven of the kingdom that he speaks of in Matthew 13 is not about control. So we have an issue, because even Paul refers to a hierarchy in a sense, and I want to explain this. He says, firstly apostles, second prophets, third teachers. And what a lot of people do when they read that is they think first apostles, second prophets, third teachers. We can correct that, though. First apostles, second prophets, third teachers. The apostle and the prophet are the foundation of the church, according to Ephesians 2:20. It means they are the first, that means they're the last. If they're the first, it means they have the greatest responsibility to wash the most feet. That's what an apostle is. An apostle washes more feet than anybody else. The greater level of authority is not the greater level of control, it's the greater level of responsibility to serve. The greater level of authority is a greater level of responsibility to serve. If God gave you authority over one child, you have one child to serve, equip, train, launch out. If he gave you 10 children, you have authority over 10 to wash their feet, train, equip, serve, and launch out. See, it makes sense in the family structure. Yeah. Unless we have a warped understanding of God as being this giant controlling spirit. That he's not. Now I have to control 10 children. But that's not how he is. Also, once you start to look at the other paradigms, like for example, God is not honored by having a bride that he has to control. He said to us, don't be unequally yoked. I don't think he's going to be unequally yoked either. How much honor does it give God that he goes, well, I got this bride that just does everything I tell her to. She's just a total robot. As a husband, I don't want that. I want a free-thinking, strong, equal, eye-to-eye relationship with a spouse that when I say, let's go destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, hey, I'm going to talk to the spouse first and we're going to interact like God did with Abraham. Or, these Israelites, they just so bother me, I'm going to destroy them all. Well, let me talk with Moses first, eye to eye, face to face, and we will figure out what we're going to do together. That's the kind of relationship that God wants to have with his bride. But a lot of us can easily slip over into this structure, and it's a structure that religion has fallen into. It doesn't need to be this way, but it's something we've gotten off into, to thinking, well, if he's this giant controlling spirit, then I just need to do what he commands me to do all the time. You see what I'm saying? And yet, what he's saying is, let's have an interactive relationship. Let's be equally yoked together. Did I lose some of you? You're giving me the stare. This is the best thing I ever heard, and he'll have no way of knowing it. See, control is an imitation of authority, and it comes from fear and insecurity. See, you really have two paths ahead of you. You have love and you have fear. When it comes to love leads to security and confidence, and that confidence leads you out into freedom. But over here, when you have fear, fear leads you to insecurity, and that insecurity leads you into bondage. These are the progressive stages of both sides. So we have to go back to the beginning and go, God wants freedom, so I need to walk down this road. I need to operate in love. I need to wash feet. I need to take that responsibility. So whatever place of leadership that you have, whatever place of authority that you have as an individual, look at who is it that I'm called to serve? How do I serve them? What way can I serve them? That's fundamental to being a leader in the kingdom. And this is what he's saying to Peter here, which is interesting, is he's saying, look, Peter, if you don't get this, you have no part with me. This is a fundamental key to the foundation of the kingdom. And if you don't get this right, you don't understand the kingdom, Peter. If you don't understand this foot washing that I'm about to do, you don't get any of it. Because you can prophesy, you can do miracles, you can do all that stuff, but if you have not love, remember what Paul said? Clanging cymbal, just noisy gong. So you can do all that stuff, but without love, there's no value there. So that you got this issue going on, because here Jesus has just seen, I have all power and authority. I came from the Father, I'm going back to the Father. So his natural conclusion is, let's wash some feet. Now let me give you the picture too. This is not like, hey, everybody take your shoes and your socks off in this room, and I know you all showered today, and so you have nice clean shoes and socks on. This is open-toed sandals on dirt roads, walking everywhere you go, following camels around. So you're rocking some gross feet. And with that going on, the lowest job in the household that nobody wanted and the biggest reject of the servant system would be the one that ends up washing the feet of the guests. That's like the loser job. That is the fear factor job of the first century. Like, that's got to be the guy who washes the feet. So he knows this, so his natural conclusion is to go all the way down. Not just part of the way down. Let me show you a nice demonstration of servant leadership. I'll help move the chairs and move the tables and whatever. No, he goes right for the bottom. If he's the top, he's going all the way down. Wow. Now that's something. So, number one part of this new breed of leader that I see rising up is servant-based authority. Servant-based authority. Number two that I want to talk to you about is that they're vulnerable and transparent. Vulnerability and transparency. In 2 Corinthians 6, I want to show you something. It says in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, starting in verse 11, "We have spoken freely to you, Corinthians, and opened wide our hearts to you. We are not withholding our affection from you, but you're withholding yours from us. As a fair exchange, I speak to you as to my children. Open wide your hearts also." So, what I see happening, and this is one of the things, if you start to study through the New Testament, there's not that syndrome, as I was just describing a few minutes ago, that people have learned at seminary, where you have to live, just up here to set an example, and that this is how I will set an example for you of how great and perfect I am, and then you can try and imitate that, and then feel bad privately that you aren't doing as good as the facade that I'm laying out for you, and all that stuff. But there's a reality to this, where the leaders are vulnerable and transparent. People are real, that you can, as Paul says, we've spoken freely to you, we've opened wide our hearts to you. That's the kind of leaders that the world is looking for. People are waiting for real people. Hello? People are waiting for real people to show up. Not just like facades, not just, stupid cliches that we throw out there. Well, God works in mysterious ways. Oh, thanks. That's really comforting that my kid just died in a car accident. Thank you for that worthless cliche. It really, that comforts me so much. People are not waiting for that. People are waiting for real people to show up. They're waiting for vulnerability and transparency. They're waiting for depth and meaning. There's something real. I mean, yeah, God works in mysterious ways, in the sense that He's mysteriously good. The grace and the glory and the gospel and all of that's been kept hidden for ages, the mystery revealed in the gospel is amazing. The mystery makes you keep going, wow, that's amazing. It's not something evil happens and we go, well, somehow this must be God's fault behind it all. And so He's mysteriously evil. That's not what's going on. And the confusion comes in because we say things like that. There's a lot of people who believe that the devil is just like a marionette puppet on the hand of God. And that whenever something evil happens, it's really, well, God is in control, except, well, I'm going to point at the puppet and go, well, it was the devil. But God is in control of the devil too, right? There's whole seminaries that believe this and teach this, and it's something that is filtered down throughout the church. When in reality, why do bad stuff happen to good people? There's a lot of reasons. One, we live in a fallen world. I love the story in Luke 13 where they come and they ask Jesus, what about the tower at Siloam? And there are 18 people who died. And He's like, what, you think they were more evil than you are? Like in your mind, you're figuring out some equation for why they got killed and why you didn't get killed today? And He's like, basically, towers fall over. Rather than, all the spiritualizing that we do, He's like, towers fall over, is His answer to them. You think they're more evil than you? That's not the value system that God is operating within. And our confused value system where we see Him as the author of every single thing that ever occurs ends up really, really unhealthy. When in reality, He sets things in place and He wants to interact with His creation. But sometimes His creation does things that He didn't inspire. Evil things, awful things. It's interesting because when we look at the Garden of Eden, so often as Christians especially, we look at it and we think, why was there a forbidden fruit tree? I mean, seriously, God planted it there. Yeah. And said, this is a good garden. Like, this is a good thing. I've just built paradise with an evil tree in the middle. And we're like, oh, God, what were you thinking? Why did you do that? And what we would natural tendency would want to do is let's put a fence around that tree. Or at least, God, put the tree on the edge by the cliff where we don't let the kids play, right? Or cut it down. Or if we put a fence around it, we'll be safer. But then the tree branches will grow, so we're going to need another fence. But then the fruit could roll, so we need a fence around our fence. And we end up continuing to do that till we're not living inside the garden anymore. All we can see is fences as far as the eye can see. And we can't even think, why did we even put these up to begin with? But that's called religion. That's what religion does. You get to Acts chapter 1, verse 12, and it says they took a Sabbath day's walk. And you think, if you look back in the Ten Commandments, one of the 10 is to keep the Sabbath holy. But the Sabbath is actually there for man, not man for the Sabbath. According to Jesus in Mark 2, Sabbath is supposed to be a blessing. But it got to the point where they can't walk more than 3/4 of a mile on the Sabbath, or else you're going to get in trouble with the temple leadership. So they got to the point of having what they call the Sabbath day's walk. You couldn't walk more than 3/4 of a mile without stopping for at least 2 hours. You had to take a break because you're going to mess up the Sabbath. These crazy rules that get added upon rules upon rules upon rules, and you end up living way out there. Instead of being able to live in the garden with self-control developed inside you to go, why would I eat from that tree? It's there so I have an option which gives me freedom, but why would I ever eat from that tree? Especially because I got this great one right next to it that gives me eternal life. And they ignore that one and go for the other one. This kind of brings back the whole issue of greatness too, because if you think about the temptation is God knows that in the day that you eat of this fruit, you will know good from evil, and you will be like God. Now that's a confusion, because some people have taken that and they've gone, that desire for greatness that's inside of man was a temptation to rise up and be like God. That's a problem, because she was already like God. So why would it even be a temptation? Because she's already like God to begin with. So when you go back and you look at that again, when she's called to account and God says, why did you eat? And she says, I was deceived and I ate. It's interesting because it doesn't say I was deceived. It does in our translations, but when you actually look at what it really says in the original there, it says, I forgot and I ate.
Wow. Oh.
What did she forget? She forgot that she was made in his image and his likeness. So the temptation comes along and says, if you do this, then you'll be like God. And in that moment of the opportunity of, if I do, then I'll be, well, what's that? That's a performance mentality. If I do, then I'll be like God. So the confusion then is not that she had a desire to be like God, that was a wrong, arrogant, prideful thing. It was the fact that she forgot that she already is like God. And how often that even creeps in our own life, that, day one as a Christian, you come into the kingdom, you've been made righteous, perfect, holy, sanctified, glorified, justified, everything. Woo! Awesome. It's great. That's day one. You didn't do anything, and everything was given to you as a free gift. And then what comes along? Hey, if you do this, then you'll be more righteous. If you do this, you'll be more holy. You do this, you'll be more... And you forget that you be, and so you start to try to do to be.
Come on.
When in reality, you go, I don't need that fruit. I already be. So I be righteous, I be holy, I be sanctified, I be justified, I be all of that, and I just keep walking that out. But the temptation is usually not in a dark, evil place when it comes to religion. It's usually a temptation to try to be something greater, to add to your this, to add this, when in reality it's receive a gift. Receive by faith. So as I don't know what happened, but you guys just pulled something, because we went way off from where I normally share. But there's something about leadership that this desire for greatness is a good thing. But with being great, you don't have to put yourself up on a pedestal like, I got everything together, I'm perfect, I'm great, now you can try and be great like I am great. But when Paul says, imitate me as I imitate Christ, he's saying, look, I've opened wide my heart, I've opened things up to you, I'm vulnerable, I'm transparent, you can be like that too. There's something too that gets confused so often in our religious thinking is, well, I know we're supposed to, have open hearts, but doesn't it say in Proverbs 4:23 to guard your heart? You've heard that, right? Like,
Yep.
keep people at an arm's length. I'm guarding my heart. I'm guarding my heart. That's not what that verse says or means. It says guard your heart because out of it flows the issues of life. So the real guard is set up so that I don't throw all the garbage on you. The guard is put here. I guard my heart because it says in Hebrews 12, not to let a bitter root come up because it will defile many. Yeah. I don't want to hurt my family. I don't want to hurt the people around me, so I guard from bitterness coming up inside of me because it will defile many. Yeah. So the issue of guarding your heart is guarding what's coming out, not what's coming in. That's been confused. Like Jesus said, it's not what goes into a man that defiles, it's what comes out of a man that defiles. The overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. So keep an eye on what's in your heart so that you don't injure all the people under your influence as any form of leadership.
That's good.
But instead people, well, I got to guard my heart here and here and here. And we end up guarding at an arm's length. And that's not Christ-like. Yeah, there's two other things that creep in. One, I was talking a little bit about this freedom thing. Legalism. Now this is an interesting one because everyone tries to define it differently. I remember reading an article where someone had actually written out this article saying, there's no such thing as legalism because that word does not exist in the Bible. So there's a lot of definitions of what is and is not legalism. And I think one of the clearest is what comes from 1 Thessalonians 5:22. You don't even have to look it up and you'll know this verse. To avoid the appearances of evil. Yeah, any of you have like a mother or a grandmother, you've probably heard this verse at some point where it's like, you need to avoid the appearances of evil. Well, what's that mean? Don't do anything that could possibly look evil to someone else at any time, right? Live under the suspicion of others. That's how it's interpreted. Be afraid of what someone might think about you. Just like Jesus did. Wait a minute. I mean, here he gets up in John 6, and he doesn't say, hey guys, have bacon cheeseburgers. See, he's not just going non-kosher. He goes cannibalism on them. He's like, eat my flesh, drink my blood. That's like way over the edge. Like if he had said, we're going to have, pork rolls, it would have been bad. He's going cannibal. And he doesn't explain himself. He's like, so guys, you going to leave too? No, I mean, where are we going to go? You don't make any sense, but when you talk, we feel there's life, we come alive. So it doesn't make any sense to them. They're hearing a cannibalism sermon and they're like, we're sticking around. I don't know what you're talking about. That's a pretty classic example. I saw this one the other day that I thought was amazing. In John 8:22, he says, where I'm going, you cannot follow. And it says, and they talked among themselves and they thought Jesus was going to kill himself. They thought he was suicidal. This is someone who's not living under the suspicions of others. He's not concerned about the appearances of evil. He's not afraid of what someone might think because he talked about eat my flesh, drink my blood. He doesn't care that they think he's suicidal. It doesn't matter to him. And this stuff matters to us. And there's a discrepancy here. We want to make sure that we're walking in freedom.
Come on.
And not under the suspicion of others. See, here's what's happened with that verse. Every other translation has fixed it. This is only the original King James that says to avoid the appearances of evil. Now, 400 years ago, when they are trying to translate all of this, they have options of which words to use. And so when you look at this verse, you could use the word form, or you could use the word appearances. If I said to someone, you have a nice form, or you have a nice appearance, both of those would be compliments. They're similar, they have different meaning, but they're similar. Well, instead of using the word form, they use the word appearances. Not knowing all the crazy stuff we would do with this verse 400 years later. This isn't a error, it's a cultural misunderstanding as we read it. Because every other translation, New King James included, has changed out appearances for the word form. So here's the difference. Abstain from every form of evil. That means don't actually sin. Whereas avoid appearances of evil means don't look like you're sinning.
Yeah, right.
That's good.
See what we've done here? That's the issue. Now the question too, even though Paul says to know no man after the flesh, so we're not supposed to know people after the flesh and regard them after the flesh any longer. If we see a friend coming out of a bar on a Sunday morning and we're thinking, what are they doing? What's wrong with them? What's happened? Why are they in there? When in reality, why aren't we thinking the best about people? I bet that bar has 50 people laid out on the ground, and you did an altar call, and this probably occurred. Because we're operating under a critical suspicion, accusation kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we're like, at least if you're going to go evangelize, go out the back door of the bar so nobody sees you. Don't you want to avoid the appearances of evil? And we're so confused about this stuff. It's a problem. I have a friend who literally grew up in like the snowy area in the Northeast in Pennsylvania, and every Sunday they would park 3 blocks away from church and walk through the snow in the public parking section, even though there's amazing parking spots right across the street every Sunday morning that they could park and walk right across, except that was in front of a bar. And you don't want to be caught parking in front of the bar on a Sunday morning, because what might someone think? And we can all turn and twist that, however, because we've all experienced that at one point or another. And that fear of suspicion, Jesus just didn't operate under it at all. He doesn't care what you think about him. He's doing what he needs to do. He's walking in freedom. And the people around him, he's like, he would let their stupid come up. And they're saying, let's call fire down on Samaria. And he's like, oh, guys, no, that's really not why I'm here. And you think about it, too. He allows enough freedom that they're thinking, let's call fire down on the Samaritans. That's one, that's super condemning, judging, destructive. But 2, it's mega racist. I mean, these are Jews, those are Samaritans. They didn't say, hey, let's burn that city over here to the ground. They said, let's burn their city to the ground. Because they already are operating in racism toward the Samaritans. That's heavy stuff. And he's like, how long must I bear with you? One of my favorite Jesus quotes. How long must I bear with you? We need to be vulnerable, transparent people. We need to be honest. We need to be real. We need to open our heart wide. We need to share our hearts. Every time that Paul uses these terms about fathers or my sons in the faith or my brothers and sisters, everything to him, he uses these family terms and dynamics. But it's never in the sense of authority, in the sense of control. It's always in the sense of affection. It is not a control that he's operating in. It's an affection that he's operating in that family kind of approach that's like, you're my kids. When I stand before the Father, this is how I'm going to be rewarded. You're my joy and my crown. That's the way that he sees this whole thing, this whole kingdom. And this leads to my third, what I want to share with you, is that the leadership that's rising up, 1 is servant-based, 2 is about vulnerability and transparency, and 3 is about being affectionate and warm. See, the kingdom of God is a family. There's been a lot of confusion because of institutionalized thinking that it's a part that I'm a member of a church. If you're a member, then there's usually a confusion that doesn't see that you're part of the family. Because a family, there's more freedom. You come, you go, you come into the family, you're part of the family, it's easy. But there's people who they lock in, I'm a member of such and such. And that can be good in the sense of knowing where you fit and how you connect. You're part of the member of a body, but also there's a greater measure to that you're part of the body. And you're mutual members with each other, more than just member on a piece of paper somewhere. So this concept, and we see it so, for us, it seems like these are missing pieces of our teaching, our understanding of what leaders are meant to look like and act like and walk this thing out. And you see this in 1 Thessalonians chapter 2. He says, in verse 17, my brothers and sisters, when we were orphaned by being separated from you for a short time. Just listen to the language that he's going to use, because it's so passionate, emotional, connected. Brothers and sisters, when we were orphaned by being separated from you for a short time, in person but not in thought, meaning we were only separated from you physically but not in our mind. We're still with you in our mind. Out of our intense longing, we made every effort to see you. We wanted to come to you. Certainly I, Paul, did again and again, but Satan blocked our way. For what is our hope, our joy, our crown, in which we glory in the presence of our Lord Jesus when he comes? Is it not you? Indeed, you are our glory and our joy. So when we could stand it no longer, we thought it best to be left by ourselves in Athens. We sent Timothy, who is our brother and co-worker in God's service, in spreading the gospel of Christ, to strengthen and encourage you in your faith, so that no one would be unsettled by these trials. For you know quite well that we were destined for them. This passage, the way that he talks, is so different from what you would get in a typical seminary leadership course. They would be like, this is way too connected to the people. They're going to see who you really are. They're going to see your mistakes and your failings. You need to guard your heart. You need to, set an example that they can imitate. You need to be controlled so that they can see what being controlled is like. And there's these thinking and this understanding that permeates down, and maybe nobody in this room's ever gone to seminary, ever going to go to seminary, but it filters down. And it filters down through the body into this thinking that this is how we live as Christians. So even if you didn't go get leadership training, you've seen leaders, and we follow those examples, and it leads us down that same path. And I'm hoping to step into that path today and go, this is not the direction you want to be going.
Come on.
We need to stop and turn this bus around and go back to Freedomville. This is not where you want to live. Just stop the car right now. And it's good to say it to you, because you have places that this house is going. And this needs to be in the foundation. And I know it already is, or else I wouldn't feel safe to even share here. I don't want to get crucified. So I know there's certain places I can safely share this, because the leadership understand their heart is to serve their people.
Yeah.
And that's true here. And there's an affectionate, warm understanding. And there is a vulnerability and transparency. And there's a family understanding. And so if I can come in as the stranger you've never met before and talk to you as a father, I will. If you'll allow me that place. I know it's a little strange because you haven't heard me before, but essentially, this is really important stuff that we all get. No matter where we are in life, if you're just a parent, if you're just a worker, if you're just a pastor, if you're just a chief apostle, it doesn't matter, whatever follows your name. It's all the same function of you're called to serve. You have a different sphere to serve, a place to equip people, empower people, wash people's feet, to love on people, to be a father, a mother, a sister, a brother, that you're part of a family unit in one way or another. You fit inside a family here. You get over to 1 Timothy 5, 1 and 2, and in 1 Timothy 5, 1 and 2, he says, not to rebuke an older man harshly, but to entreat him as a father, an older woman as a mother, a younger man as a brother, and a younger woman as a sister with absolute purity. So what he just did is he said it doesn't matter who you are, you fit inside this family paradigm.
That's right.
Yeah.
If you're older, you're a mother or father. If you're younger, you're a sister or a brother.
Amen.
Everybody fits inside the family structure. Absolutely. You fit inside it.
Amen.
Everybody is, I hear this all over the place, and orphans are always asking, where's a spiritual father? Just look for someone older.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. They have haircuts like mine.
That was good.
It's not that hard. It's really not that hard. It'll turn white, then you'll be a father. So, this other piece of it, I talked about affectionate, but I want to talk about that from another angle. This is where the body has gotten so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's not necessary. Family's not uncomfortable. A healthy family, anyway, is affectionate and warm. And you feel accepted and loved and valued inside of that. The number one reason people leave the church and go into the New Age is because they feel that it is a cold institutional environment. They also sometimes get rejected because they're operating in the supernatural and their church doesn't accept it or value it. But if they felt like they were part of a family that loved, accepted, and valued them, they could still operate in weird stuff. It's really the coldness that causes an issue. And this is what I've seen. I'm working on a book down the road, one of my future ones, about the New Age movement, understanding it from a kingdom perspective of 90% of them started in church. So there's something happening that's not right, that they're ending up over in the kingdom of darkness when they start inside God's family and they choose to leave it. That says something that we need to look at. That's a problem. So in the New Testament, you have 5 of the epistles that end with greet one another with a holy kiss. Oh man. There's one you never hear about in a sermon, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, holy kiss, Batman. And we think, but we're Americans. We don't do that. There is a sense of a Mediterranean culture that's different. It's the same with like a Hispanic culture or some of the other cultures in the world that are just much more affectionate than us who have been descendants of pilgrims and Puritans, right? So we have this like holy rigidity, and that's kind of our thing. And it's easy for us to look at it and write it off as just cultural difference. Another thing that makes it different too is that we're not living under the persecution they were living under in that window of time and history in our country as well. So you go and you show up at church, and in this time period, you don't know if you're going to see Jim and Bob and Tim, probably not good Hebrew names, but you don't know if you're going to see them next week because they could be killed. They could be persecuted, found, taken, dragged out of their home, just like Saul was doing before he got saved. So they're living under intense persecution. It's a lot easier to love and hug and kiss on people that you might not see next week.
Mm-hmm.
That's different than, I see that person every day. I see them every Sunday for 20 years. Why would I get close to them? Who cares? And it's a whole different experience for them. So we have some issues between this and us. And part of it too is that we haven't seen it through a family paradigm. So the fear is that if you let people hug, the next thing you know is you're going to have an epidemic of adulteries and divorces go through your church. I know, but it's what actually people think, and it's good that we just laugh. It's okay. But when you look at leadership, you look over in 1 Timothy 3, he says, if you want to be a leader, you have to govern your own house well.
Mm.
Because if you're not a good leader in your family, you're not going to be a good leader in the church. Because the church is a family. The kingdom is a family. And if you can't do it right in your natural household, you're not going to do it right spiritually.
Right.
If you're controlling your kids and you're going to, be this kind of awful parent, you're probably not going to be a good pastor in the church either.
Right.
It made sense to them. So I think I want to share a story, but a few years ago, I want to share a passage too, but a few years ago, there was a group that I started at my house. It started with 4 people people actually. Small little group, started in my living room. 4 people, had a little Bible study once a week, and it was just a ton of fun, and it started to grow. And then we outgrew my living room, and so I went and I asked a local cafe, can we host meetings here? Is there a night that you don't have a lot of customers? And they said, yeah, Thursday nights, we never get anybody. Friday night's big. Wednesday night, people come in after church. So Thursday, you can have the place. So we start taking over the place. It gets to the point of like 45 people, 50 people every week. And I mean, we're taking every single chair in the room. And we set up a CD player, and we're playing worship music, and people are getting into it. And this was week after week. Now, one of the things that was unique about this is something we called the hugging song. Aww. No, it had nothing to do with hugging in the song, per se, but it had this big drum roll at the beginning. And so it was Sonic Flood. I don't know if you remember that worship band, but Sonic Flood, and they did their In the Secret, In the Quiet Place, which actually I had a friend who sang that at another cafe on an acoustic guitar, and they're like, man, what a great song you wrote for your girlfriend. And so that's the song we picked out to be our hugging song. So when you hear this big drum roll, what that meant is you now have approximately 3.5 minutes to hug every single person in the room before the song ends. So now you have every single chair is filled with youth, and this place is packed wall to wall, and 3.5 minutes of total chaos, not trying to destroy the place, but hug everybody in the room. Well, this had gotten so well known in the group and in the area that the baristas who worked there would fight on the schedule over who got to work that night.
Oh.
And then we would have people who come in just to get a coffee. They don't know what Bible study's going on. And the next thing they know, they get their drink and they're like, what is happening here? And they get 40 hugs in a row. And they're like, this is a Bible study? What kind of Christians are you? Loving? I don't feel judged or anything. This is crazy. So we had that going. And then we would have people come in. This was like some years ago, 10 or 12 years ago. And so we also had, we would have, like, the goths were a big thing in our area at the time. We'd have these goths that would come in.
Oh, wow.
And some of them would just show up just for the hugging song, and then they would leave. Sometimes they would stick around, they would stay, but the interesting thing was, from their perspective, and even some of the non-Goths who just are regular Christians, part of our Bible study, would say, this is the only time in the week that I get a hug.
Yeah.
That's messed up.
Yeah.
This stuff is important, and although we get into all of our little thing and we're like, well, I'll give you one of these kind of dealies. This is a religious hug, You gotta look away, so you don't look them in the eye. You gotta hug like one shoulder. Make sure they're doing exactly the same too. Makes it more holy. Because if you look at your bracelet, that's how Jesus would hug. I found this interesting. The name Habakkuk, one of the prophets in the Old Testament, actually means embrace or hug. I think the body of Christ needs some hug prophets back in the church. And some cuddling. Cuddling's good too. Thank you, front row. Demonstration.
I love the room.
The interesting thing about that story, though, is that I found out, a couple people mentioned to me that one of my friends would run and he would hide in the men's room during a hugging song every week. And let me give you the picture, too. I'm from Rochester, New York, which is upstate, not New York City. We're 8 hours away. People ask me, did you see the towers fall? I said, yes, I watch TV like you do. And I'm way over here in Rochester, which is an interesting location. We don't have a lot of cowboys. Let me just preface this statement. So, living in upstate New York, and here's my friend Mark, who's huge. He's like 300 something pounds and wears a cowboy hat everywhere, he's the one that's disappearing every week. And we're like, wait a minute, where did he go? And somehow he would sneak through the crowd, not getting hugged, cowboy hat and all, and he'd go and he'd hide in the men's room until the song was over. I hadn't noticed this trend for a while, and then a friend pointed it out, and I was like, oh, well, let me ask him about it. And I said, so, Mark, what's going on, man? And he said, well, I just think a hug is a very personal thing that should only be shared among family, and it just, that's my thought on it. And I said, look, I hear you, I get that. But don't you see us as family? And it had never registered in his mind that church members and Christians would be considered family. That's how confused we are about this whole thing, that we're like, that's not family. What do you mean that's not family? That's family.
Wow.
These are the people you're going to live with
Come on.
ever.
Freaking out.
All right, we're circling the airport. So Luke chapter 7, here's the story that I see this as the heart. This is the heart of the whole thing. In Luke 7, Jesus is at the Pharisees' house. So he's gone to the house of religion. So he's in Luke 7, starting in verse 36. When one of the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him, he went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. A woman in that town who'd lived a sinful life learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house, so she came with an alabaster jar of perfume. As she stood behind him at his feet weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair and kissed them and poured perfume on them. When the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know who is touching him and what kind of woman she is, that she is a sinner. Sinner. That's that accusing appearances of evil thing. If he were really a prophet, he would know better, because he would know how that looks to the rest of us. He would know not to do that, because we'll think bad things about him. He would live under our suspicion if he really knew what he was doing. Jesus answered him, which I think is interesting, because this is a thought. He said to himself, and then Jesus answered him. Like, oh, Simon, I have something to tell you. Tell me, teacher, he said. 2 people owed money to a certain moneylender. One owed him 500 denarii, the other 50. Neither of them had the money to pay him back, so he forgave the debts of both. Now which of them loved him more? Simon replied, I suppose the one that had the bigger debt forgiven. You have judged correctly, Jesus said. Then he turned toward the woman and said to Simon, do you see this woman? I came into your house, and you did not give any water for my feet, but she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You did not give me a kiss, but this woman from the time I entered has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not put oil on my head, but she poured perfume on my feet. Therefore I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven, as her great love has shown. But whoever's been forgiven little loves little. Then Jesus said to her, your sins are forgiven. And the other guests began to say among themselves, who is this, that he even forgives sins? Jesus said to the woman, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. So he shows up, and the house of religion is not going to serve him. It's not going to wash his feet. See that?
Come on.
He didn't wash his feet. He's not going to do that. He's Simon the Pharisee. We'll get the slave girl to do it. But, well, she's not around, so we'll let the prostitute do it. Whatever. He's not going to serve. And then number 2, where's my kiss? Remember Psalm 2? Kiss the Son, lest he be angry. Well, Jesus didn't get his kiss. Where's the affection that should be there? I mean, Jesus Christ is in your house. It's like... And yet, nothing. No affection. No like, I'm so glad you came to my house for dinner. It's so good to have you here. I mean, at least Zacchaeus, he's like, hey, Zacchaeus, get out of the tree. Go make me dinner. I'm going to your house tonight. And Zacchaeus hosts him, and he's like, I'm going to give 4 times as much back. And there's like that response that's real, rather than, you come in here, I won't wash your feet, I'm not going to greet you properly, and I know you stink a little bit, but I'm not even going to give you the oil that we always give people when they come to the house. That was a common custom, because 1, you're wiping camel stuff off your feet. 2, let's give you a little perfume or a little bit of oil. Well, he doesn't even do that. There's nothing right about this situation. But the one who's real, and the one who's not living under fear of what might people think, well, if he knew, then he wouldn't let her touch him like that. He wouldn't let her near his feet. Or he'd just kick her out of here or condemn her or something. But this is what real leadership is like. It's serving, it's affectionate, it's warm, it's family-minded. It cares about people. And it demonstrates it in that kind of way that people feel like they're part of a family.
Yeah.
They feel loved and valued when they walk into the atmosphere. They feel free in the atmosphere to be themselves, let their stuff come to the surface. Mm. See, grace can't deal with things that are never brought to the light. And we talk about grace to non-Christians, but then once they're in here, the grace is not so much given to our own family at times. Can anybody relate to that?
Yeah.
You feel a little more concerned about letting your crazy come up to the surface because what might someone actually think or do or say about you? When in reality, this should be a safe place that all that stuff can come up, and then grace can deal with anything that's in the light. But as long as we have to try and keep it all hidden and bottled up and kept away from people because they might judge us and what might they think, then we live in such a way that after 10 years, you show up one Sunday and you're like, where's Steve? Well, we didn't really know what was going on with Steve, but for the last 10 years, this has been happening in his life, and he never shared it, and now he's blown his life up and he's gone. He's not here anymore, he's moved on because this and this and this happened. And it's because we have to be able to step out and be real people and allow people to be real around you. Let reality come out. Be a fan, be accepting, be serving, because that's the call to leadership, is to take care of people, to value, to accept and embrace people. Even if they're just someone who's been forgiven much, you're there to love much. And you're there to extend that forgiveness. So, that's all, folks.